these cases today, and hopefully, as we look at them in their entirety, and all of them, we start to have a better picture of what is the separation of church and state. So, let's start out with this. Lynch versus Donnelly in 1984. Okay. We know that we have a wall of separation between government and religion, but we also looked at the Lemon standard yesterday, Lemon versus Kirchman, and it said that it doesn't have to be completely separated. What was the term that they used there? There cannot be an excessive entanglement between government and religion. It didn't say there can't be any entanglement between government and religion. Okay, so in most of these cases, if I could find the actual pictures, I gave you actual pictures of them. Sometimes I couldn't, and Lynch versus Donnelly was one of those that I could not. In Lynch versus Donnelly, there was a courthouse. Now, maybe we should talk about this first too. There's a difference between a public building and a private building. And we don't mean who can enter the building. As far as government is concerned, a public building is one that is run by the government. Okay, so a restaurant is not a public building. Yes, the public can go in there, but it's not run by the government. It's not paid for by taxpayers' money. So when we say public building, we're talking about public schools or public buildings, courthouses. What else?
Library.
Not always libraries. Not always. They're not always funded by the government. But sometimes courthouses, capitol buildings, things like that. Those are public buildings. Okay. And Lynch versus Donnelly, a nativity scene was set up inside, I think it was a capitol or a courthouse. Okay. And the nativity scene is Jesus in the manger. Okay. We see around Christmas time every year. Okay, that was put up in a public building, in a government building. Okay, above it was a sign, kind of a banner that said "Season's Greetings," and then in the same area was a Christmas tree, and then a Santa Claus. I think it was Rudolph was on there too. All right, so somebody complained, saying, "Hey, this is a violation of separation of church and state," and sued us. Now it's a government building. What do you think? Violation of our separation of church and state, or not? Alex, you're saying yes because you say it's promoting a religion. How is it promoting a religion, do you think?
Well, if it's a public building, a lot of people are going to be going in there, and a lot of people are going to be seeing that one religion, and that's it.
Okay, so you think because people are going in there, it's a promotion of that religion, people are going to see it. What do you think?
Well, I think that Christmas stemmed out of that, I don't know if you want to call it a myth or whatever, but that's where it originated, so it's part of the season. Just like Hanukkah, if you put stuff about Hanukkah in there.
Do you think, you're saying it's just part of the season?
Yeah.
Okay, other thoughts?
It doesn't say Christmas or anything, it's just a season greeting, so it's not like pointing for the specific thing.
I mean, it does the Jesus. So.
This is the origin of Christianity right here. I mean, you can't say, well, okay, just because it doesn't say this is Christmas and it doesn't say that this is Jesus in here, we know this. This is the origin of Christianity right here. It's kind of a big deal in the Bible. Christians think it's kind of a big deal every Christmas. You know, correct, this does not say Merry Christmas, but this is, without a doubt, a Christian symbol, a Christian.
Non-Christians celebrate Christmas, so
Do they celebrate the birth of Christ?
they celebrate Christmas, which is from that.
Okay. Other thoughts?
It doesn't not hurt nor offend anyone's religion. I mean, it doesn't abide by everyone's holidays and everything necessarily, but I mean, it's not like saying that this is like a true season, this is like a real thing. You have to believe this.
So you're saying because it doesn't state that you must believe this, that it's not a violation of separation of church and
No,
state?
it's just it doesn't offend. Well, I mean, I wouldn't really. I mean, people might get offended if they don't believe in it and they have to see it, but it doesn't necessarily rain down on their religion.
But remember we looked at Everson yesterday, and maybe that's a good thing. I see Sabrina's looking through that. On the Everson one, you know, if we're going to use that as standard, not was it Everson who said, did it say that, hey, if this offends somebody, that it's not acceptable? You know, neither can the state or the federal government set up a church. Neither can pass laws that aid one religion, or prefers a religion over another. Can force a person to conform to a religion, or punish you for what you believe, or taxpayers' money going to promote a religion. Government can't be involved in the affairs of a religion. Do you think any of the Everson standard applies to this one?
No.
We're hearing yeses and we're hearing no's. Okay, Sabrina, you say no, none of them fit. You don't fit. Okay, Alex, what one do you think fit?
Well, last one was like neither state nor federal government can openly or secretly participate in the affairs of any religion. That's openly.
Is it participating in the affairs of a religion?
Like just having Jesus right there, and then also symbolizing like Christmas is his birthday and everything.
Okay. Another way, and this was, you know, government is to remain religious neutral. Remember that line that we had? And the other thing is, think of it, does it seem as if this is a promotion of a religion over another? Okay. Now, let me give you what the court ruled on this one. They ruled that this was not a violation of the separation of church and state. Even though it was without a doubt a religious symbol, not everything here was religious. The season's greetings was not, Santa Claus is not, the Christmas tree is not. They are not religious. They may be indicative of the season of Christmas, but they're not religious symbols. And what the courts ruled that, even though that this was on government property and put up by the government itself, it was acceptable because it was a celebration of the season. Kind of what you would say. A celebration of the season, not a promotion of a particular religion. Okay? So sometimes you say, well, hey, there can be no religious things at all in government buildings. Well, here's a religious thing, without a doubt. This is religious. And it was put up in a government building by the government, and the court ruled that that was acceptable. Okay? Now, we should probably look at another case here, because there's another one that happened only a few years later. This is Allegheny County versus the Greater Pittsburgh ACLU. It should be ACLU. And in this one, I found the actual picture, but it's a little hard to see. Okay, we had a county courthouse. In that county courthouse, they had, again, the same scene, the manger scene. Maybe I can move this out of your way. And it's a little difficult to see, but if you look close, these are the steps that are going up. These are the rails going up the steps. And then here is like the manger right here, and the star is here, and, you know, Mary and Joseph and baby Jesus are here. Okay, outside of the courthouse. This was inside the courthouse, standalone, nothing else around it. Outside the courthouse was a Christmas tree and a menorah. Okay, and this was challenged to the U.S. Supreme Court. And in 1989, they had to settle this one. Okay, what do we think? It's a similar, but it's not identical. Is this a violation of the separation of church and state?
That's all they had up.
Correct.
Then yeah, because that's the only thing up, and there's not any other things that they can base it off of, saying like, oh, well, it has to do with these ones too, but those ones aren't religious. It's kind of like, this is the only one. It's just the religion part of it.
I'm going to repeat a lot of what you're saying, not because people didn't hear you, but because it doesn't take the mic doesn't pick it up. So you're saying that because it is a standalone, there's nothing else there, that's a violation. Sabrina.
But there's a menorah outside. And it's bigger. It's actually like quite
Oh,
bigger
there's a
than
menorah outside?
Yeah, there's a menorah and a Christmas tree outside.
There's a Christmas tree and a menorah outside. Well, I pointed that out. It was the only thing inside. The outside, they had other stuff.
So, I mean, the only reason why, like, the one is inside and the other two are outside is because those are super big. And also the manger, if it gets wet or snowed on or whatever, it could ruin it.
Okay, so you're saying that the only reason that these are outside is because they were too big to be inside,
Yeah.
okay?
Doesn't matter
Do you-
if they're outside.
Go ahead.
Doesn't matter if they're outside. You're talking about this as in a building, but outside the building.
Still on a government property, it's put up by the government. Doesn't change the fact that it wasn't put up by a private citizen. If you want to put up anything religious in your yard, on your business, that's your right. That's not a violation of separation of church and state. It's not even a question. But when it comes with the government, which is, taxpayers, and putting up in government buildings or put up by the government, that's when it becomes a question. But then,
I think because you've got both the manger and the, your, people would interpret that you're trying to promote both. That's just how I interpreted it. But then some other people would be like, well, we might have someone of a different religion and that's why we put it on.
okay, okay, so you think it's maybe a promotion of both? Yeah.
I think they accurately displayed all the religion, all the celebrations that were going on at the time. Since there's
Isn't Kwanzaa close by?
I think that's either earlier or later.
So you're thinking they're showing, they're accurately depicting certainly Judaism with Hanukkah and Christianity with Christmas, and then
And then secular, whatever, with the Christmas tree.
the secular with the Christmas. I apologize for always repeating, but I want to make sure this is that.
But also, I feel like if somebody went up to them and wanted their religion displayed as well, I think they would probably say, okay, yeah, whatever.
That's a good point. If somebody else wanted, we don't know though, because that didn't occur. That didn't occur. And that is an important concept here. All right, here's what the court ruled on this one. It was not okay. Actually, they ruled two separately. They said the outdoor was, because it was showing both religious and non-religious. But the indoor, where it was just the manger, the manger scene, they said that was giving Christianity prominence. It was endorsing or promoting that particular religion. So the standalone was not okay. Now, if you look at the two cases combined, this one, really, the two parts of this one, and the one we just looked at, the Lynch versus Donnelly, both of them are dealing with the manger scene, right? And religious displays of stuff. But to determine if they're acceptable or if they're a violation of the separation of church and state, you really got to look at not just what it is, but the context of where it's put. Does that make sense? So you can't say, well, putting up the manger scene in a government building is a violation of the separation of church and state. But you also can't say it's not. It depends on the context of how it's put up. And that becomes kind of important. Keep that in mind. It's the context. Something is a standalone, maybe it's an endorsement. I mean, this may not be a great example, but I got the Steelers and the Astros up here. Am I endorsing those two teams? Yes. Am I making you believe that they're the best team? No, but it's without a doubt an endorsement of those two teams. I don't have the Vikings up there. You know what I mean? I have the Steelers up there. It's saying, hey, this is who I like. It's not saying you have to like it, but without a doubt, it's an endorsement of them. When, I guess the same concept is when the government puts up a standalone, it's making an endorsement of that particular religious thought or belief. Does that make sense? All right, so let's look at another one that's similar. It kind of pits freedom of speech and freedom of press, or freedom of speech and freedom of religion together. This is the same kind of idea. This is Capitol Square Review versus Connect in 1995. And this is the Ohio State Capitol. Now, the grounds of the Ohio State Capitol, an outside group was allowed to put up, let's see if I can get a picture of this. They were allowed to put up the manger scene. Now, this was not the actual picture of the manger scene. It's not even the Ohio State Capitol. But they were allowed to put up the manger scene in where it wasn't put up by the government, but the government gave them permission to put that up. Okay? The KKK wanted to put up a cross out there too. Okay? The KKK, and this is a picture of the cross that they put up, and then it was challenged. Okay? Another outside group wanted to put something on the ground. And Ohio said, no, you can't do that. And they sued. And went to the U.S. Supreme Court in this particular case. Now remember, it's put up by private citizens, but it's put on government grounds. If you put up private stuff on private property, it's not a violation of separation of church and state, there's no question about it. But when the government is saying you can put it up here, then it becomes a question. So, what do you think? Were the KKK denied their rights? Was this a violation of separation of church and state? Say it again.
Is the KKK even considered a religion?
Well, it's not a religion, but they consider themselves a Christian organization.
Yeah.
You know, they themselves are not a religion, but they are Christian. That's not considered a cult, I don't think.
So, the government had permission to put up the manger scene?
The government allowed a group, gave permission to put up the manger scene.
Right, but the KKK just did it without any permission.
Well, they were denied permission to do so.
Oh, they were denied permission?
Or
So-
told to take it down. Either way, they were not allowed to do it where another group was.
Well, I feel like if they just did it without asking first, then they would be less likely to get it, because it's showing like disrespect of the government.
Should have asked first. That's not the question. You bring up a good point. But that's not the question we're trying to settle on this. That's not why this one went to the U.S. Supreme Court.
I don't think that they were, I don't think it was fairly given that another group got to put up the manger scene because they went on to put up a cross. They're both affiliated with the same religion. I just don't think it's fair that they let someone else put up the manger and then they wouldn't let the case take it.
So you don't think it was fair that the government allowed one to put up their things and another was not allowed? Dustin?
I just think it was like a government choice, and like the KKK could put up their cross literally like anywhere, and like they, I mean, if the government would have said like no to like putting up the manger, I think then like they would have just put it up somewhere else, kind of like that. Like they should have just moved on.
Just put it somewhere else? Okay?
Even though the government did not put up the manger by it themselves, it doesn't pretty much like just like people were coming and like asking and they like let them. Like neither of them should have been up because there was just that one thing, and then like they're both showing just one religion.
So you think neither should have been allowed to put it up because they're both just showing one religious thought?
Yeah.
Okay?
And even though one is up by the government, it's not.
Okay?
I think either what Bailey said, or like maybe it was too much Christianity, you know? If somebody else, like a Jewish group had come along, then they would have approved it, but like, I don't know, maybe they only had like a one thing rule.
You think it was too much of one religion? All right, last thing, and I'll give you the answer.
What year was this?
89. But 95, excuse me, 95.
Because, well, for like 10 years before that, was when the KKK was really active in killing people and like black people, you know what I'm saying? When they're really like, when they had like hundreds of thousands of members and stuff.
Maybe
So it
farther
might be
back,
different
yeah.
depending on the year, because there might have been recent scenarios with them getting involved and stuff.
Okay?
More of a racial thing, even though it's looked at as not a religious group, but
Well, certainly the Ohio, I would absolutely agree that Ohio did not want them put this up because of who was putting it up. They didn't want the KKK to put it up because of, they didn't like the KKK. Last one, Dylan, then I'll give you the answer.
Well, I guess if you know anything about KKK is their symbol, what they use like for straw people, I guess, are like dolls or whatever you want to call them, but like they'll burn people on them, and it's kind of like their symbol for like down with colored people.
Correct.
It's just not, it's not what they wanted to use the cross for. I feel like it probably wasn't exactly what the cross would represent to most people.
Okay, so you're saying that the reason behind the cross, and actually, all of what you're saying is I like how we're thinking this through. Here's what the courts rule. That the KKK's rights were violated here. That if the government says that one gets to put something up, then they can't deny somebody else the right to put it up. The government could deny everybody the right to put up their displays on government property. But if they say you can put up yours, they can't say to somebody else you can't put up yours. Because doing that, isn't that giving favor to one religion or one school of thought over another?
It was the same religion, wasn't it?
But it doesn't make any difference, it's the idea. And here's a little bit of a speech, but it applies to religion, because it applies to other cases too. If the government says yes, it's yes to all. If the government says no, it's no to all. But the government doesn't get to pick and choose, because when they pick and choose, it's showing favoritism, discriminating against or discriminating in favor of. Now, how does this apply? I'm not ignoring you here, but I want to, how this applies today. And we see these cases, similar cases, all the time around Christmas time. It'll be, I think this happened in San Diego. I can't remember if it's a courthouse or what it is. But they've allowed an outside group to put up a religious display. I think, it's the manger scene every year. And 2 or 3 years ago, an atheist group wanted to put up a display too, some kind of religious or anti-religious thing, or their belief. I can't remember exactly what it was. And they denied them the right to do that. Well, what do you think? Are they going to win that one in court? You can't say, we like your ideas, so you can do it. We don't like your ideas, so you can't do it. Is that really a separation of church and state? Remember, government is to remain religious neutral. So the next year, I think, when that group applied again, and they had the letter. This last year, they said nobody's putting anything up because they didn't want the atheist group to put it up, so they said nobody. And they have the right to do that too. But you don't get to pick and choose. If you're to remain, the government is to remain religious neutral. They don't get to pick and choose what religion or what religious thoughts, what they find offensive and what they find okay. And that's important to remember too. Okay, these 3 cases all kind of dealing with the same thing in a sense where they're all dealing with the manger scene in different ways. If it's a standalone, of course, that's a violation of separation of church and state. If it's, with other things, then I guess it's okay. If you're allowing outside groups to put it up, as long as all outside groups have the equal chance to put up what they want. The government doesn't get to pick and choose which ones that they favor.
So what happens after the KKK won the situation?
Then they're allowed to put that up.
There's no punishment or anything?
There's no punishment. No, most of the time when you see people suing for civil rights, it's not suing for money, it's suing for a right to do something. And oftentimes people may be suing for something that they're actually not just suing for themselves, are saying, hey, this is for others that follow me. But almost never do they get compensation when they win those lawsuits. They just win the right to do what they're trying to do.
If there's this separation between government and church and all that stuff, why do they even bother letting religion come into the courts when there's churches that they can show that stuff off to? Why do they even bother with dealing with that stuff when it's still a religion and the government system that's being promoted, whether you want to say they're religious neutral, but I mean, even if other religions don't want their stuff in anywhere near the government office, why do they still even bother letting religious
Why bother?
stuff?
If I'm rephrasing your question, why do they even bother? Why not just say nobody can put anything up? We're not going to put anything up. You can put it up on your own private property or in churches or whatever. Why bother? It's a good question. I think maybe why it happens is because people are very passionate about religion. And, drive around at Christmas time in Brandon, do we see lots of decoration. And it's not all religious decorations, but people become very passionate about it, especially different times of year, and want that display. They want their religion displayed. And I think, government officials are religious too. You know what I mean? And others want those displayed. But you bring up a good point. Why not just leave it completely out? And if, I guess, the courts would have ruled that there's an absolute separation of church and state, there can be no entanglement between government and religion. But remember, the court said not an excessive entanglement. So that excessive entanglement thing makes it a little harder to interpret.
Couldn't the courthouse just say, like, even if the KKK one, could they just make the other people take the manger scene down so the KKK?
Could they, yes, they could say that they both had to take it down, yeah, yeah. Okay, now keep in mind, those are 3 cases there, they all have dealing with the same issue, but if we take those in our context, if we look at those and use them as precedents, hopefully it helps us for other things. Okay, so this is in Franklinton, Louisiana, and actually this is not the actual sign that went up. But in Franklinton, Louisiana, the city government paid for the making of a sign, and then put the sign up on government grounds, and it said, "Jesus is Lord of Franklinton." Okay, now again, I couldn't find that actual sign, but this happened in Franklinton, Louisiana in 2002. How will the courts rule on this particular one? Is that a violation of the separation of church and state? Yeah, this one becomes easy after looking at some of the others, right? It's put up by government, on government property, professing a religious belief, or at least a religious statement. Okay, this certainly seems like a government promoting religion. And if you don't believe that statement, and you live in Franklinton, your taxpayers' money went for the construction and the payment of that sign that says Jesus is Lord of Franklinton. Right, that's a violation of our separation of church and state. That's an easy one. That didn't get to the U.S. Supreme Court. That was challenged early and was not allowed to go on. Now, sometimes people say, "Why do you care? Well, how's it hurting anybody?" It's not hurting you if you don't believe. If you're not a Christian, let's say you're an atheist, it's not hurting you. This sign's not hurting you. You're right, it's not. But it also is your taxpayers' money who went to pay for it. Your taxpayers' money could have went to pay for something else that wasn't religious-based. And if we have this separation of church and state, it makes a difference. But the other thing is that sometimes we look at stuff only from the majority point of view. Now, I don't know how many of you are religious, and I don't know how many of you are Christian if you're religious. But my guess is, if we were going to start saying, "Hey, are you religious, and what religion are you?" the vast majority of the people who say they're religious are going to be Christian in Rand, because the vast majority of Americans are Christian. So usually it is Christian things that are being put up. Jesus is Lord of Franklinton is a Christian statement. Okay? The manger scene is a Christian one. Sometimes we got to look at, would we feel the same way? Why bother? It's not hurting you if it was something that wasn't a Christian statement. If it was the government who put up a sign that said, Jesus isn't real, or Christianity is a fake, or religion, doesn't exist, would the same people that say, "Well, just get over it," would they say, "Yeah, that's okay that the taxpayers' money went to put up a sign that professed a belief that I don't believe in"? Or would those same people say, "Wait a minute, why my taxpayers' money going to put up a sign that says that religion isn't real"? You know what I mean? When we're in the majority, sometimes we look at this and say, "Well, who cares? It's not hurting anything." But again, it's government putting these signs up and promoting and making these statements. And would we feel the same way if the statement being made was not what the majority of people feel? Because government doesn't just represent the majority. Remember Larry Flint, you can't have 5 wolves in a sheep only for us for supper. It's not just the majority that get the rule. It may be, but not when it comes to individual rights. Minorities, minority of thought, minority of religion, have the same rights as a majority does. This one's going to be hard. Actually, I'm going to give you 2 cases that were argued before the U.S. Supreme Court on the exact same day. And a few months later, they handed down their rulings on the exact same day, dealing with pretty much the exact same issue. And in one case, they ruled it was a violation of the separation of church and state. In the other, they ruled it was not, just to keep things confusing for us. So let's look at what they ruled. But let's look at the cases. This is McCreary County Courthouse. This is in 2005. A private citizen donated to McCreary County Courthouse a framed copy of the 10 Commandments. So the 10 Commandments certainly are a religious doctrine. And it's found in the Bible. The story says that that God handed the 10 Commandments down to Moses personally, through a burning book. Okay, so so it's pretty hard to say, well, they're not religious related. They certainly are. Okay, so the 10 Commandments, he gave him a framed copy of the 10 Commandments. And it was a kind of a standalone. And then when people were complaining about it a little bit, he gave another framed copy of the Declaration of Independence and a framed copy of the Constitution, and they put them on either side. These are not the exact, this is not the picture of where they were, but this is examples of what I could find. Okay, and it was challenged saying that putting the Ten Commandments in the courthouse in Kentucky is a violation of the separation of church and state. Okay, before I give you the answer to that one, let's look at Van Orden versus Perry. Rule again on the exact same day. In this particular case, and I'll get the details of it, a 6 foot by 3 foot wide granite, I guess, statue, monument of the Ten Commandments had been donated 40 years previously by a group called the Fraternal Order of Eagles, which is a civic organization. And this was put up on the grounds of the Texas State Capitol. On the grounds of the Texas State Capitol, which is 22 acres, which is pretty significant, there were 17 other monuments and 21 other historical markers on those grounds. Okay? So, and that was challenged too. So basically we're looking at, is the Ten Commandments, which is certainly a religious thing, both of them donated by outside groups, both of them put up in government buildings. Okay? I really thought the Supreme Court would rule yes, they're okay, or no, they're not. But they would rule the same on both cases. But they didn't. One, they said, was a violation of separation of church and state. One was not. So which one's a violation?
The first,
Why do you think the first one?
because we only know, like, from what I heard, is there's only that one in the first one. Like,
Well, no, but they added.
well, no, I know, but that's the only religious thing.
Well, I don't know if there's any other religious things on the Texas State Capitol. It said 21 other monuments. They didn't say other religious monuments. They could be statues of, Sam Houston, or, monuments of different groups. We don't know
I
if
don't
there's any
think
other
they're
religious.
denying anybody anything.
Why?
Like, if they wanted to put something up, I don't think Texas was denying anybody to put anything up. So,
Well, what do you think? How can you make the assumption that Kentucky would? No one else to try.
some stuff on the Texas one, there wasn't that much on the Kentucky one.
Okay? Dylan?
The second one is probably, it's not okay just because this one has the Ten Commandments, but then it also has the U.S. Constitution and the Declaration of Independence, so it kind of is a religious symbol, but it has secular symbols around it, so I mean, maybe it's not thinking as much as, and also like, the Declaration of Independence, I mean, it kind of talks about God, but I mean, like you said yesterday, it doesn't really hold any, political weight or strength or anything.
Okay, so I'll rephrase what you said here, that you said that this one you believe is okay because it has other historical documents around it, and both of them kind of major things in the U.S., Constitution and Declaration of Independence. Okay.
Yeah, and then because the other one was just one standalone giant sculpture.
Well, it was one of 17 other monuments, but it was in a bigger area, 22 acres, which is a huge area. This was on, I guess, one wall, I don't have a picture of that monument, I have a picture of the monument actually, but I don't have a picture of, other monuments around it. Great.
That has something to do with the fact that this one is inside and then the other one is outside.
You think the fact that one is inside and one's outside may make a difference?
Well, I don't know, because the other one with the manger on the inside and then the Jewish one and the secular one on the outside, I don't know if that could have something to do with it.
I like how you're thinking, though. You're looking at another case that's similar, right? That's using precedence where the one was inside, that was the Allegheny County Courthouse one. The one that was outside, the court said were okay, so you think maybe the difference is inside versus outside. Does inside give something more prominence? And I'm not sure on that, because you see it more if it's outside, right? If I put something out on my front lawn and you drive by, you're more likely to see it. However, if it's something that I value more, I may put it inside to protect itself. I don't know for sure if inside versus outside gives it more prominence, but I like how you're thinking. I don't know.
I'm thinking like this first one might not be okay because it's right next to like some documents that are really important to us, like the Constitution and the Declaration, and those are kind of like the law, like the law of the land kind of deal. And so to put that in there, it's kind of saying like, oh, also these are too.
Interesting. You say that because these are important documents, certainly the Constitution is the law of the land, that by putting these in the same context, you're giving it the same priority, the same weight of importance as you're saying that they're all three similar in weight of importance, which is interesting. I never thought of that one. That's good thinking. Pat?
So like, I feel like this one would be ruled as allocation, and it'd be pretty easy to take a picture frame down, where it would be a lot more work to move the giant statue outside.
I don't think the courts care how much work it is. You know what I mean? If it's a separate, I see where you're coming from, but I think the courts are looking at, if it's a violation of separation of church and state, remove it. If it's not, it can stay there, not like remove it unless it's heavy. You know what I mean? Because then if I'm government, if I want to promote religion, then I'll just put up stuff that is really hard to move, and then it will be acceptable. You know what I mean? You see the error of that logic. Go ahead.
You said that the statue was 40 years old already when it was.
It's been up there since 40. It was placed. Well, it's been up in 40 years at the time. Donated 40 years previously.
Okay, so maybe it's become part of the history of the courthouse or whatever it was. So to take it down and be like taking a part of its history away, because it's like surrounded by other parts of that courthouse's history.
Do you think that how long it's been there makes a difference? Part of history. And actually, I don't know if you're exactly right on that, but you guys have reached the conclusion, most of you. This, the Supreme Court rule, was not correct. Alex, you were right away. That this was, for a couple reasons. One, it was a standalone. And then as a kind of an afterthought, or to make it acceptable later on, they added the other stuff. So the intent certainly seems to be a religious intent. But they also mentioned, interestingly enough, in their opinion that the Texas one had been there a long time. And the fact that it had been there longer, I don't know how much it made a difference, but the fact that they mentioned the fact that it had been there for a while must mean that held some weight in their decision. What this has done is really clouded the issue. Rather than saying, all right, the Ten Commandments can never be put up in government property, it said the Ten Commandments might be okay or might not be okay, depending on. Now, being one of 17 other monuments and other things on the ground makes a difference too. Okay, and then the length of time it was there makes a difference. And the intent of the people who put it up apparently makes a difference. But I guess what I'm trying to get at is sometimes the stuff can be kind of confusing. It's not, it's not just simply, hey, the government can never put up any religious stuff, or the government can always put up religious stuff. Oftentimes you got to look at the context of it. Sometimes we get confusion with it. All right, so based on what you've seen in all the cases so far, okay, let me talk to you about a couple things that have happened with license plates. Now, a license plate is issued by the state. You don't get to make your own license plate and put it on your vehicle, right? Now, there are vanity plates, so you can request a certain thing. You could put, like, Brody is cool. I don't know, that seems like a lot of letters, but, and I'm sure that's taken. But you could, a vanity plate it's still South Dakota's plate. It's still got everything South Dakota. It's just you get to pick the letters, the numbers 11, okay? New Jersey allows vanity plates. They did not allow a personalized license plate that says atheist spelled with a 1, not an I. And oftentimes, things aren't spelled right on vanity plates because you can't get enough letters on them. They did not allow this. They said it was offensive, and New Jersey had a list of offensive words and things that you couldn't say. Like you couldn't use the F word on a license plate, even though you could request to have your own vanity one. And they had a list of offensive terms. Atheist was not on that list, but they didn't allow it. However, they did allow I am sexy, climax, I am God, and yeah. Yes. Now, they didn't allow atheists, but they did allow these. Do you think the word atheist is any more offensive than some of these? I would think if you're a religious person, someone saying, I am God would be more offensive. Do you think that New Jersey denied the right to have atheists on there because they didn't like the religious thought? Yeah, this seems like a violation of separation of church and state. They made a choice of promoting a religion or discriminating against a religion. It doesn't seem as if they're religious neutral. Let's look at North Dakota because they had a similar thing. They didn't allow the license plate "is no God." However, they did allow license plates "I love God" and "praise God." North Dakota allowed some religious statements, but denied other religious statements. Does that seem as if North Dakota was choosing a religious thought that they agreed with? And is the government allowed to do that?
No.
This is a violation of separation of church and state. You don't get to pick and choose what religious thoughts that you can express. If you're the government, you can as individuals. Again, we're not the government. There is no such thing as a separation between church and business, church and citizens, church and individuals. But there is a separation between church and state, government and religion. Okay? So on your car, if you want to paint on the side of it, God is great, or there is no God, that's not a violation of separation of church and state. It's not even a question. But the government doesn't give you a car. They don't license, they don't say, you have to pay us for this car. But for license plates, it is required that we have those by law. And the government issues those. So they are undeniably government stuff. Okay, so that's where the government and religion thing comes in. And again, if they allow all religious statements, anti-religion versus, then maybe this is okay. But by picking and choosing the ones that they like versus the one that they don't like, that changes things a little bit. Now, we haven't got into, I think the next one gets into religion in school. We haven't got any cases on religion in school yet. And these are just religion in government. And we'll start talking about religion in public school as well. Do you have a clearer picture of what would be acceptable or not acceptable out in society then with the separation of church and state? I really think the more cases you look at and read, the better the idea, because just like in Sabrina did, she was using precedents for one to help make a decision on the other. It gives us an idea of what will be acceptable based on how the courts have ruled in the past. And that's the best we can do to define some of those. That's enough for today. We'll stop here. I know we got a minute or two left, but we'll stop. Because we'll start with religion in school tomorrow. You guys did a great job today. I like how you were thinking. I like the questions that you asked.